So hi everyone, welcome back to another Digital with Akash course. And this week we're going to be discussing all about search engine optimization, also known as SEO. And for those who are kind of new to the idea of SEO, hopefully this will be a really informative class to really explain the ins and outs of what search engine optimization is and how to use it for your own business. And hopefully as well, you'll also get some tricks and some tips to even propel yourself in this very competitive space. So just a reminder on, we've finished the last three courses of social media marketing, influencer marketing, and affiliate marketing, which are all live on the YouTube channel. And we'll be following on next week with content marketing. I do know content marketing could be also perceived as SEO. So for me, content marketing for this course will be really about how to create amazing content, and I'll be doing a lot of tips and tricks on like what apps I use, how do I edit photos, and how do I create my images on pretty much no budget and yeah, just my iPhone. And then we'll do email marketing, paid search, PPC, and Google Analytics. So that's just a bit of an overview, but we're pretty much at the halfway point of the 2-month course. So yeah, the YouTube Digital with Akash affiliate marketing is live, but today it's all about SEO. And for those who don't know, SEO is the practice of optimizing content to increase the quality and quantity of traffic to your website through organic search engine results. So the most important thing is to understand what is these search engines, and these can, the main one is Google, and that's pretty much who and what we talk about pretty much when we say SEO. But that doesn't exclude the likes of Bing, Yahoo, Baidu, etc. But for me, I think pretty much let's just focus on Google as the main kind of point of conversation for this course. So how does it work? Very simple. There's a lot more in depth, which we'll go into, but just as an overview, you create your site and you have several pages within your site. So once you've made those web pages, the search engines such as Google will start crawling all over your page and the internet. So crawling is, think of it like a spider crawling a web. It's pretty much that. That's where they got the name from. So it happens sometimes every, it can happen every 4 days. It could happen every 6 months. There isn't necessarily a rule book, and Google doesn't disclose how they necessarily do it. But they are always constantly crawling for new tags and metadata, which we'll go into later. So once the search engines have crawled over your page, then they will use algorithms to determine the rank and how relevant it is to certain search terms. And this will place an index on your page. And this is pretty much what we can say is the most important factor to determining if someone types in, for example, Coca-Cola, does Coca-Cola.com come in the first organically? Not talking about the ads, because that's all about SEM, that's search engine marketing, and that's basically when you're paying. This is organic search. So the mecca of sort of brand building is to have your brand, your website featured in the first page of Google. That's where you want to be. And this is pretty much determined on your ranking based on the crawling and the indexing of your page. And then they will therefore display your page relevantly as to your rank. So if it's something that it feels isn't relevant to the search term being done, it will put you maybe not even showing in the next 20, 30 pages of Google. But as you know, Google is infinite pretty much. So that's a very important way to just an overview of how does the process work. But in simple terms, just to make it really simple, it's really about writing words and phrases that your ideal customers or people viewing your site would type in into Google, and how you're mapped into those search engine requests. And why is it important? Well, if you or your business wants to attract new customers from search engines and also your existing customers, then SEO is really an essential aspect of your digital strategy, because without a good SEO, your website won't be found. And if you want to be done right, you have to make sure your SEO is found to the right people at the right time. And that's why a really well executed SEO strategy is crucial for any business or even an individual today. If you're an influencer or a blogger, it's just as important. So what does SEO success look like? Like, it can vary in many terms, but think of it as like this. You increase your rankings, you get more organic traffic. You get more organic traffic, you get more calls or more web form fills in. You get more web forms calls, you get more increased sales. You get more sales, you get more increased revenue. So this is pretty much just a very basic overview today, but maybe in 2020, we can omit the calls and the web forms. We can go straight from traffic to sales because we've really optimized our site. But traditionally, this is what SEO success would look like to many people. And this is just an example of fableandmain.com, how I have learned a lot about SEO, having built the site with fableandmain.com and having basically have to figure out how does a new brand in the infancy of its birth, how do I get Fable and Main at the top of my SEO? And as I said before, it can take up to even 6 months to get searched and get crawled and to get visible. So I've had to go really deep into learning about all the stuff we'll explain in this course to make sure that, which we have today, Fable and Main is the number one. As you can see, I also do engage in SEM, meaning Fable and Main at the top is an ad, because I want to make sure that it also comes in as an ad, so I don't have competitors kind of steal that ad space, which they can do. A lot of competitors will put their products on your search terms because they want, for example, let's say another hair care brand put their ad on when someone searched Fable and Main. So I made sure that I had some ad presence there. But yeah, pretty much as you can see, fableandmain.com is number one on Google, which is the dream. So that's good. So how much does it cost? So the best thing about SEO is it is free. And I think when I'm explaining what I mean by free is it's all about optimization. So SEM is marketing, which means that you're paying to get into those certain areas. But optimization is basically how much effort and work and time you put in. So the reason why people kind of have SEO budgets and think about SEO as a cost is because normally people work with SEO experts that are in charge of pretty much your strategy, and they make sure that your site is optimized. And reason why we do that is because most of us don't know really what SEO is, don't know how to do it, and it's a lot quicker and easier just to get an expert to do it. And the cost then, dependent on your nature of your business, will depend on which markets and which kind of keywords are you operating in. For example, if you're only operating in a local town of Wandsworth, then your SEO is going to be pretty good because you won't have many competitors bidding and searching for those specific words. But if you are pretty much looking at like a hair care brand in the whole of Europe, you will have a lot of competitors. So a very important SEO strategy is needed, and a budget might be wanted as well to make sure you have the right experts. But the reason why I like to think of it is I don't think you need an budget for SEO. I think you just need to start learning how to optimize because it's pretty simple. I never engage in outsourcing it. I just learned on my own just by Googling. I didn't do any webinars or any courses, but I just Googled a lot and trial and error. But hopefully today I'll be explaining the ins and outs of it, so then you guys can do the same and save a lot of the time that I had to put in, and I'll share some of my tips and tricks. And just going back to how long does SEO take to start working? As I said before, it can be usually on average, you're looking at 4 to 6 months to really start seeing results. But it's very important, this is what Forbes said, that it does bearing in mind that it's when you start seeing results, because it's really how you feel and how you want it to be portrayed. Because for example, and I'll give you a really good example, if I am Fable and Main, my hair care brand, by the way, for those who are wondering, and if I want to prioritize the rankings to Sephora, because I want to predominantly have my sales on Sephora.com, I would want my SEO to be a bit lower than Sephora. I don't want it to be number one, right? Because I want most of the traffic and sales to go to Sephora.com. So again, your SEO strategy is so dependent on your specific needs and wants, and every business is so different. So it's important to know that. But on average, 4 to 6 months. But if you're really good and you have the right strategies in place, it can be as quick as a couple of weeks. And we got it in pretty much a week. But the one thing I had to do is when we migrated the site, so I initially had a site set up on Squarespace, just a simple site, and then we actually developed a proper site. We didn't do the right kind of, it's a bit more complicated, but it's about Google Search Console and putting the right kind of tagging and content tagging and everything. We weren't crawling the internet for Fable and Main. So we suddenly dropped off Google. Like Fable and Main didn't exist. So I had to go even harder to bring it back and revive it, because that's the problem with SEO. And we'll go through it later in the negatives and the disadvantages of SEO. But as much as you work on it and you grow it, it can fall in a second because you're at the helm of these search engines, which changes regularly. So it's something to very much to bear in mind on. So it's a long-term marathon, not a short-term sprint. So what are the key types of SEO? Now, there are many websites that will tell you many different types of SEO. Some say there's 3, some say there's 4. For me, I've looked at a few, and the ways I understand it is there are 3 types of SEO. There's on-page SEO, there's technical SEO, and there's off-page SEO. So let's go into the first one, which is on-page SEO. So on-page SEO basically relates to any content that's on your website, on your pages of your site. So predominantly this will revolve around stuff like keywords. Keywords you're calling out, and that will link to key search terms that people are searching for. So it's about finding the best keywords to target on each page of content. It's also about publishing high quality content focused on target keywords. And it's also about how to optimize those target keywords by putting the right meta tag, metadata. And for those who don't know what metadata is, this is pretty much the most basic kind of explanation I can do of it. It's a lot more in depth, but basically think of it as private tagging information that's done on the coding side, on the HTML of the document. So it's not consumer facing on your site, but Google will pick that up and then they will put that on their front end of their website, of their Google search, google.com. So that's when you see, for example, for fablemail.com, I put metadata for each page, each blog post, each photo, each homepage, everything, to make sure that the crawling of my site is so optimized that Google will find a lot of my metadata tags and will boost my rankings. So I would always recommend, if you're a brand and you have the back end of your website or you have an agency that does your website, make sure that you're tagging and you have your metadata on point for every single page, because that's what's going to increase your SEO. Probably one of the biggest factors of increasing your SEO. But this is just an example of how this sentence, a modern hair wellness brand of potent plant-based products inspired by ancient Indian beauty secrets with vegan, clean, and cruelty-free formulas. This is something that I put that's not on the website, but it's a succinct way to kind of have some important keywords, short and snappy keywords that people might search it in Google, for example, vegan, clean, cruelty-free hair care, hair wellness brand, potent plant-based products, Indian beauty secrets. Those are things that people can just kind of search individually in nuggets, but that's all there in that one metadata sentence. So you want to think about a sentence that's super clean, super easy to digest, but also is very searchable. If I just did a modern hair brand with Indian products, not many people would be finding it then. So think about your metadata and the content quality that you're putting out there. And technical SEO. So this is now the second thing, and this is really about non-content elements of your site. So things to do with your site speed. Are you mobile optimized? Your indexing of each page, your crawlability. Are you putting the metadata in there? Your site architecture. How is it built? Is it complicated? Is there like a members only non-visible area? Structured data and security. So I'll be talking about some of them a bit later. But all of these things are so important because when you don't have most of these things in place, you have a very high bounce rate. And what bounce rate is when someone goes on your site and then within 10 seconds they leave because they see that it's not optimized for mobile, or they see that it's just very complicated to use. And all of those data that Google's getting will eventually start making your site lower in indexing, less likely to be featured, and you'll lose your SEO that you've gained, or you won't even gain anymore if you haven't even started. So that is a very important thing to, I would even say sometimes start with your technical SEO and then you can go on to your on-page SEO once you've sort of ensured that your technical SEO is strong. And the last thing, which is more, I think it's the third thing, but it's not necessarily as important as on-page technical for me, but it's still very impactful, is called off-site SEO. So what off-site SEO is basically techniques to strengthen the influence and relationship your website has with other websites. So this is very much dominated by your PR activity. Are you having a lot of articles that are linking to your site? Are you working with, for example, influencers in their blogs? Are you working with trusted like websites that basically will drive traffic to you? Also social media, that's a very important offsite SEO. You know, every time you have traffic from social media, that increases your SEO. So are you putting your website link on your link in bio on Instagram, for example, or on every YouTube video? Do you make sure you have your clickable URL? Offsite SEO is very important because when Google starts seeing that traffic coming in, and people definitely organically coming to your site, it does naturally increase your organic SEO. Some people also might be familiar with these terms, white hat and black hat SEO. I don't really like using these terms. That's why I didn't put it in my key types of SEO, but I wanted to mention it because a lot of people might have heard this, or a lot of SEO experts will refer to this when they work with you. White hat and black hat SEO is basically like, none of them are like terrible, but they're basically like good and bad. So white hat basically is everything that you're abiding by the sort of regulated rules that Google has advised on SEO tactics. This is like creating high quality content, optimizing your HTML, your site, sharing on social media, doing the off-page SEO, making your site user-friendly and optimize like the technical SEO. So pretty much using the 3 SEO things I did, the positives of those, gets you doing a successful white hat SEO strategy. But black hat, which I'm not saying is not good to necessarily do, because it's like, I call it like the cheeky SEO, but you've got to be very careful because you don't want to go deeper and deeper into just doing black hat SEO techniques. And what this is basically like link spamming. Like, can you put your links in loads of different places to increase your organic SEO? Can you put a lot of keywords? Like, I'm not saying I was doing it, but I was very close to it with fableandmain.com. I had quite a wordy sentence. Some people might be saying the world's best selling shampoo in America, These are just stuffing it with keywords that you're trying to basically make people that are searching for it, that might not necessarily want your product, find your website. And eventually that could backfire. Also, kind of, are you doing irrelevant and popular keywords? Are you just putting in things that, like, people are searching for but has nothing to do with your product? Let's say I'm a hair care brand that I put skincare in my thing. People eventually will be like, no, this is not a skincare brand, so why is they putting their skincare words? So don't try to get customers that are not ever going to be relevant to your website. I think that's something that's just a tactic that you should do organically, but think of it like what we sort of do in Instagram with hashtags, right? We sometimes just put a lot more hashtags that we think, oh, but I want to put a hashtag that I think people will search for because then my content will be seen more. Think of it like that, but from an SEO tagging point of view. And then copying content. Like, if you're using similar words that other retailers or other sites are using that stock your product or have similar products to you, or even just a completely competitor site that you're just copying their search terms, eventually that will backfire. So basically it's sort of like, don't cheat, but in life we've got to cheat a little bit to get ahead, but be really tactical and careful how much you're doing, because it can hit you in the back, and then it will affect all the hard work you've done on the white hat techniques. So generally SEO, what are the pros and cons? Well, as I said, it's free of cost. There's no, the only cost is the amount of time you're putting in, or obviously if you're outsourcing it. But that's the beauty of it. Today, you can start improving your SEO. There's nothing stopping you. And I'm sure many of you who have sites or work for companies that have websites, you could go to your e-commerce teams and say, do you have metadata on everything? Like, have we updated it regularly? Or could we do something better? Or should we have better keywords? Are we looking at it regularly with market needs, etc.? So that's basically a huge pro. It does garner consumer trust. People, when they see something that's high up in an SEO organically, not in an ad, but like first or second or third in Google, usually consumers are like, okay, I'm sure many people have clicked on this. I trust this website. It gives you trackable results on your back end of your site. You can see where people are clicking on, which links are they clicking on, so you know which metadata is working, which tactics are working. It does generate targeted traffic because they're coming in from keywords that you have sort of built on. So it's not just like a blanket ad where you're just targeting America and beauty lovers and then people come. Here it's like you're actually getting people probably typing in your brand or your business. And then it also does generate sustainable clicking, because once you work hard on your SEO strategy, you then basically have that for a long time. Like now, Fable and Main is in the #1 spot on Google. So I have now a #1 prime spot that I think I will get sustained clicking generally now. I've worked hard for it, and now it's in the #1 position. But the cons, so it does take time. That's very important to know. Like it's a long marathon, as I said. It's not a short sprint. It depends also on your business. Like if your brand, you're going to be up against it if your brand name or you as a human have a very like overused word. So if I'm a John Green and I'm a celebrity, John Green, I feel sorry for you, but it's going to be very hard to find your name on SEO unless you are really famous. But if I have a longer name or something that's, or a brand name that's not commonly used, then usually you would have a much better SEO. You also have the risk of losing hard work, meaning all the work you put in, if you do something like the black hat techniques, or you stop crawling your internet, or your site goes down for a week or whatever, you can lose your SEO presence, and it's not guaranteed because of changing of algorithms. So it can always change. So today you can be number 1 and tomorrow you can be number 5, and that's just the way it is. Also bearing in mind that your SEO will vary depending on the user that searches it and which country they're in. So obviously that's why usually when we type in certain things like, let's say Sephora, in France, the link you get is sephora.fr, but in America, you'll get sephora.com. So your SEO does also depend a little bit on your geolocation and your country presence. But also the most important con is it's just the results are not guaranteed. Like you can put in a lot of work, but if your business is just quite difficult in terms of getting your words out there, and you don't have a lot of this kind of offsite SEO techniques, doing on-site SEO and technical SEO is doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get results. So that's why people do a bit of SEO and SEM, meaning they do the organic optimization, but they also do paid ads. And I've shown that when I did it with I did the ad and my organic. I've got 2 links, and hopefully I'm hoping that people will click the organic one, so I don't get, because every time someone clicks on the ad, I pay, right? But usually, actually, so there's an article that said around, I think 70% of people on average click on the organic one. It's just like the go-to, because people normally don't click on ads, so they scroll a bit and they click on the organic one. So that's a positive factor. But now I want to explain a bit more about today's trends and giving a bit more kind of context of SEO today with something that's more innovative, new, and not just what people might already know. So the first is snippets. So snippets is something that's quite, not necessarily new, but a lot of people might not think of it as an SEO strategy. And what this basically is sometimes on very popular keywords, Google will start putting these snippets in. We see it a lot when we search for things like, how do I heal my wound, or how do I get rid of a cold? Usually you'll have some snippets, and normally they're referred to as position 0. So they're above the number 1 organic result. So you can think of it as like the gold, like the best thing to get, right? Because it's like above number 1. And to achieve this for a brand, for example, when it often is related to like, snippets is often related to questions and like kind of bullet points, or 1 to 10 kind of, like what are 7 tips and what are 7 questions I have, or whatever. So to achieve this is to make sure on your site you have a very strong FAQ section, or kind of a blog that answers specific needs in a very easy to digest, sentence by sentence way. If you don't have that, then Google will never be able to find it and put it into the structure, right? That snippets usually follow. So that's very important to think about, and how strong is your FAQ section. Influencers should also be leveraged for SEO. So obviously, having done our influencer marketing course, we now know the value of influencer marketing more than ever. And the thing that many brands do wrong is we kind of negotiate when working with influencers for a swipe up and that's just 24 hours, by the way, and a content. But instead, like thinking of it as a holistic approach, and thinking of it as like, how can I also improve my offsite SEO with backlinks, is why don't you ask influencers to do blog posts and leave your site on their blog, or working with more platforms that keep the site for a longer period of time for Google to able to like crawl it and improve your SEO, like YouTube or Pinterest. So that's very important, because influencers come from a very credible source with a lot of guaranteed organic traffic with a very low bounce rate, hopefully, usually, because people are coming in with a trusted kind of opinion on it. So they can definitely help build your valuable backlinks. And that's very important when Google is evaluating your web ranking. So on that note, it's also very important to make sure you work with influencers that are relevant to your industry and your audience. So then you don't have sort of like spamming or irrelevant audience traffic. Also, secure websites are a must. Now, this will probably seem like a little bit like just obvious, but actually many brands and businesses don't do this well, especially the new small ones, including initially our .com wasn't secure, so we had to quickly change this. But user safety is very important. So that does dictate your user experience. And usually when they go on a site and they see not secure on the top, or they see something like, sometimes you get these warning or pop-ups, but usually it's just on the URL, you see a not secure little logo. Many people will just quickly go away or won't feel comfortable being on that site. And these high bounce rates can really affect your organic search listing and your positioning. So just a simple tip would be to enable your HTTPS protocol for your site, and making sure that you have a secure connection that's obviously encrypted and authenticated, so your website doesn't have this not secure image button or whatever. But just making sure you really are investing in your site security is very important for SEO. Also, this is a very interesting one, I feel, is voice searching. It's something that I haven't necessarily even thought about for our sites, but it's very impactful today. Today we're using more and more mobile devices, but we're also using a lot more of these like Amazon Echo, Alexa, and HomePod or Siri. And people are searching for a lot of things via voice. So this is sort of like going back onto my initial tactic of being, bite-sized, creating content that people are searching for. Because when people are Googling on the internet, on a website, on the laptop, they usually don't type in the full question. They usually type in best shampoo vegan or whatever. But actually, when you're talking and you're using voice recognition, you usually will say, hey Siri, let's be careful because I actually have Siri. You say, hey Alexa, what is the best shampoo that's vegan and clean for me to use? So making sure that you have metadata or tags. Yeah, you see, that's my Siri. That's why I shouldn't have said that. But when you basically think about your metadata, is can you imagine, for example, sometimes even that balance between short, snappy, but also colloquial and conversational keywords as well. So does that tell you that maybe short, choppy keywords are not as important anymore? Food for thought. But it is expected that, I think they said by 2020, but I think post 2020, 50% of all internet searches will be initiated through voice. And I think that's just going to increase and increase. So voice search is super important for SEO. And I'm pretty sure most businesses haven't thought of that. So that's a little bit of a nugget, and I think something interesting to think about. Mobile UX will also determine your rankings. I think we often really focus on web, and we think about how our web is and how our web metadata is and how everything is Google on our website on the desktop. But actually mobile is so important, as we know. I think over 92% of active users of the internet are just on mobile. And here it says that 4 in 5 consumers conduct local searches on search engines, and they search on a smartphone pretty much 90%. And then a lower on a tablet and on the computer. So you're seeing most people are searching on a smartphone. So you must make sure that your mobile version is as strong and up to date with keywords, with optimization, with the right content, because otherwise you can lose your data. And the reason why I say that is when you work on websites, you usually have to do things like 3 times. You've got to do it for your desktop, your tablet, and your mobile. And even the same as when it comes to metadata, you've got to pretty much sometimes you've got to triplicate it. And thinking about how on a mobile, you don't have as much space. So usually you will get some keyword sort of like recommendations, like 300 words, 300 characters, 50 words, Making sure that you're thinking mobile potentially first is very important going forward, not necessarily about those long keywords. Because even my fableandmain.com one, it might be too long for mobile. So even me, I got to go back in and say, is that the longest length, or should I make it a bit shorter to be sure I'm mobile optimized? Then video. I think this is a very important one. As you know, video is super important, especially with the rise of YouTube and how many people are now seeing in SEO searches that YouTube is coming up even sometimes before the website. Like when I type in Jeffree Star, I just wanted to do some examples. His YouTube page is higher than his own website because obviously it's the traffic, but it's funny that how normally that Google and stuff would prefer to have more like web pages instead of social pages. before SEO, but that just shows how strong video content is in terms of being like an SEO engine. So it's very important to have an appropriate keywords, descriptions, and headlines to each video. That will really make sure that you're reaching a large number of people who are interested in that subject. Not just necessarily on YouTube, it could be on Vimeo, it could be even on your site, but are you optimizing video as an effective source of information? And are you putting the right tagging and headlines and captions on those videos? And the last thing I want to talk about is BERT, which is the I'm going to read this because I can't remember it, but it's a bidirectional encoder representations from transformers. But yeah, just think of it as BERT. I don't think anyone needs to know the full name, but BERT has been something that if you're in the industry and you kind of have read a lot about digital SEO and marketing, it's something that came around like 2 years ago, recently. And basically it was a change in the sort of algorithm. That's when I was going to the point of saying Google can always change. Tomorrow it can change. So we have to always just be at the helm of these big giants that can change tomorrow. But Google's BERT update basically was improving the way that how Google understood search queries. So it used machine learning and natural language processing to better understand the context of search queries. So thinking of it like how to connect the emotive angle than just the words. And that's very important for many brands. And I think it's been a huge success for many businesses that had keywords that were at the detriment of itself just because it was such a common word. For example, skincare brand Summer Fridays, for those who know. If I type in Summer Fridays on the internet, Google might just see the two words summer and Fridays and then think, oh, they're talking about June, July, August, and the weekdays, Friday, and maybe something to do with national holidays. They wouldn't be thinking beauty. So when someone types in Summer Fridays skincare, the thing that could come up would be, oh, here is some summer recommended sunscreens, right? But actually, if you took an emotive angle of it and you did some kind of machine AI learning, you would have actually they would realize that this person is actually wanting to know of the skincare brand called Summer Fridays. And that's basically what BERT's allowing people to do. So it's really analyzing the search queries and not the web pages. So it helps brands that are not necessarily helped by their natural presence and their natural brand and the keywords being over competitive. It gives them a chance because of these machine learning AI kind of things that basically helps put a bit more descriptors into the search queries. But sloppy content, for example, if you're not optimizing your site, the Google BERT update will definitely destroy you. So this does make sure that you can't be lazy, but you got to use it as an advantage to propel your SEO presence. And the important thing to also know with BERT is it has open sources technology. So it's constantly changed, like Wikipedia. It's basically can be other developers can come in and make it even stronger and better. That's what machine learning pretty much is. So it's just important to know that we're going into a world where SEO is no longer, as I just initially said at the beginning of the presentations, where it's all about keywords and just matching search queries with those words. It's going a lot more high tech with kind of emotive language, with voice recognition, with video content. So we've got to really be up to speed with SEO. And that's basically the main update. So we're good with time. And now we're basically onto a Q&A section, my favorite part, and hopefully for you guys too. So we'll start with the questions I got from my Instagram earlier today, and then we can ask some of the questions that people have on this live stream. So the first question is how to optimize SEO without a marketing budget. So as I said, it's pretty much a summary of what I've been saying, but I think it's all about spending the time yourself. So SEO is a time-intensive strategy. It's not something that can be done quickly, like advertising or posting on social media. It's one of the most extensive and sort of not challenging, but patient marketing strategy. So I would definitely recommend using the tips and tricks I've given you, and also Google more relevantly for your business specific things. So there are so many websites out there on the internet that basically will help you decide what SEO tactics are good for your specific needs. But for sure, I think just starting with your site, making sure you're optimizing the meta tags, the data, the content, is it mobile friendly, is it secure? All those things will definitely be a great starting point to optimize your budget. But you won't need a marketing budget because you'll just be putting in that time. Best tools for SEO. Okay, so I'm going to be very careful what I say, because basically I don't necessarily, I've never used any tools, so I don't know necessarily what's good and what's bad. So I will be lying to you if I gave a specific example. But you could use, there are a lot of tools like Moz and Google Search Console. There are many out there, but I would really recommend just for you to try and first start doing SEO with yourself in your own time, or someone in your team. And then later, if it's really a struggle, it's not working, or if you're sort of desperate for just instant results, then I would outsource it to probably consultants, as opposed to tools, because tools will still require yourself to use it. And I think my best recommendation is do it yourself and then go to a consultant. Which are more effective, long tail or short tail keywords? So definitely the industry would tell you short tail keywords, meaning bite-sized, choppy is king, and that's the most important, because usually that's how people are searching. And you don't want to make it too long and have irrelevant keywords. I would say short tail, but because if this is a question just about keywords, meaning specific words, then yeah, you want to be as bite-sized as possible. But if this is more of a question about like the general sentence, then I would also question that and say, looking at how voice recognition is coming into the future, don't necessarily completely avoid long tail, because I think as humans, when we search and type, we want it to be quick and we do short, quick words. But when we want to say something, we often go a lot longer, and we also kind of overcomplicate it. So long tail could be relevant for you there. And not many people are competing on those words, so it could be a lot more effective for you to be found and improve your SEO. How do I get more backlinks? I'm glad that means people really know their SEO knowledge, because backlinks is something that many people don't know. But basically, the best way to improve your backlinks would be definitely now start liaising with influencers more from a SEO perspective. So thinking about that in your strategy when working with them, making sure that the link is placed in more places than just a 24-hour swipe up, which we all kind of do today. But also working very closely with in-house or external PR agencies, getting articles that really will feature your website. The ones that do really well for backlinks are the things that, for example, say top 20 hair care products this month, or top 5 sports shoes to wear in a marathon, etc. Those are usually what will really help your SEO with your backlinks. Should I handle SEO myself or hire someone? This is similar to what I said before, but I would say first first work on it yourself, and then if you really can't, then hire someone like a consultant or an agency. And then if you really need to, then you can definitely just completely rely on tools and a consultant. But I would really say work on it yourself. It's so much fun for me working on SEO, and because it's all about optimizing. So you're always learning, you're always improving. And the risk by kind of giving it away to someone is they don't know your brand as well as you do. They're not going to be on it every day like you would be on it. And it's always moving. So you will need to really find a person that also is up to trend with everything. And usually the experts, they end up doing black hat techniques because it's the easiest for them. It's the quickest way to get results. And they're just thinking short term because they just want to get the money from you each month, and they don't really care because it's not their site. So the more you outsource it, the more you're going to get black hat techniques, and then your eventual long-term SEO is going to fall. So try always to internalize it if possible. My personal recommendation. How much should I pay an agency or a consultant? So usually I would say a traditional marketing budget for SEO for a small business would be anywhere between $500 to $2,000 a month for outsourcing your SEO. You can pay consultants to come in, probably like $200-300 just to come in and just give you an overview of what you need for like maybe 2-3 hours of work. But yeah, that's pretty much a good benchmark. I'm sure you can get consultants that will do it for $100, but then the cheaper you go, the more likely they're going to use this black hat technique. So just be a bit careful what's happening there. It's like basically saying, oh, I can outsource my influencer to get more followers, but the people you're paying less will just probably buy followers for you. So just be careful of who you're working with and which sites, and really avoid the sites that just like, there's Google sites that say, improve your SEO in 10 days, work with us and get your money back in 30 days, all that stuff. They're going to 100% be using black hat technique. So you want to only work with recommended people or freelancers or LinkedIn, do some job applicants for SEO experts that kind of feel like they're in-house but also external. Don't go to these kind of box solutions, not recommended. How do I kickstart my site to be crawled by Google? So this is something that I had to do. So basically blogs is blog posts is a really effective strategy to be found by Google. I think it's something that Google just loves reading, because there's a lot of, because to improve your SEO, having sometimes even more than 2,000 words on a site is really impactful. So I think blog posts are good because it's a lot more keywords in the page itself, but you also have the good tagging to then bring people in there. So blog posts is very important. And I kickstarted our SEO when we lost all our crawling by just creating like 6 blog posts in like a week. And suddenly I started seeing that the blog posts were coming, but not the shop and not the homepage. And then before I knew it, the homepage was number 1. So blog posts is my best recommendation. What is the difference between SEM and SEO? So I think I spoke about this quite a lot, but basically SEM is where you're think of it as marketing. So you're paying for your site visibility to be increased, and it's short term. So it's probably going to last until you have the budget and then it's gone. Whereas SEO is organic, you're optimizing, so the amount of work you're putting in, but it's the work you put in stays on forever. So it's a lot more sustainable because all the work you put in is going to stay. But in SEM, all the money you spend will be gone the minute you decide to not have your ad anymore. So that's the difference in SEM and SEO. But to be honest, many people think that like, why is there a difference? Are they the same thing? Like they're completely complementary as well. I feel you can have your SEM and SEO strategy hand in hand. What is gray hat SEO? Okay, so this is good because this is why I said about the white hat and black hat. Gray hat is pretty much in between, just mix white and black and you get gray. And gray hat is when you do some good strategies and you do some bad strategies. So overall, that's pretty much when you have not necessarily an agency, but when you have those like box solutions that tell you that they can improve your SEO, or I'm sure many of you have got hundreds and hundreds of LinkedIn messages of random people being like, hi, I've noticed your site's not good. Do you want to redo SEO, work with us, whatever. They're the ones that would use probably gray hat because they'll do some good stuff, but they'll do some bad stuff too. But I don't really like this white hat, gray hat, black hat, because I think we're a lot more beyond that today. That's very like 5 years ago. I think now I think the 3 thing I did, on page, off page, and technical, is just the best way to talk about SEO. Should I do ads and organic SEO building together? Yep, exactly. Get SEM and SEO. Absolutely. I think they work hand in hand. Your ads will be used for targeting potentially new acquisition of customers and people that you wouldn't normally find, and also fill in the gaps where your SEO struggles. Because if someone types in, let's say, fableandmain.com, I'm number 1. If someone types in Ayurvedic Indian hair care brand, I don't know if I'm number 1. I might be number 5. I might be number 55. I don't know. I actually have to check. But basically, that will come in time. So that will take about 4 to 6 months before I'm found even more. So ads can be that short-term solution until your SEO increases. But of course, the more and more you delve into areas that are not necessarily your brand terms and a lot more competitive, like Indian hair care, the more expensive it's going to be. So you've got to find that balance between SEM and SEO. So we have some questions, and I thought it will be good to answer them in the next 15 minutes. So let's go to them now. As a new hair care brand, are there any specific terms that you use for SEO results? So initially, shouldn't really be saying this because it's like, then also it's like competing against my brand, but it's fine. Usually it's like things like, vegan, if it is, silicon free, if it is, kind of those keywords. People love like phthalate free, sulfate free. That's a big area of search key terms. More so that gets shown more than like say shampoo, conditioner, mask. You want to really have those pre-keywords. Also, maybe any differentiators for your hair care brand, like for us, Ayurvedic, Indian, that really helps. And I think really making sure that you're having the word hair care, hair, like the two words are very important, not just hair, but hair care as well. But that's pretty much the main things. With a good SEO, when your page is number one in Google rank, is it necessary to put the name of your brand page as a keyword for a paid ad in Google, since you're already showing us as a number one organic result? Yeah, so the reason why I do that is, again, to take up that space in case another competitor comes in and bids on my key terms. Also, you can also put other things that your metadata can't. Like you can put specific, like for example, I put like 10% off, welcome, when you got your first order with the code welcome 10. So that stuff I don't want to put in my organic metadata, but you can put more like offers and short-term things that happen each month. Let's say this month you have a July offer for something that you can put in your ad. So you can really use the ad as quite a tactical monthly feature, but also it's just, usually when you're doing ads, you're doing in other terms. So I would do like Ayurvedic hair care, and naturally, because it's quite cheap, I would just do Fable and Mane as well, because it might as well bid on my brand term, and usually not many people would be bidding. So it's not that expensive. And remember, with those ad builds, those ads, you pay when people click. So you don't pay for an impression, you pay for a click. So if they end up clicking, you're like, okay, that's great because I got a click, I got potential sale, so it's worth it. What does it mean to optimize HTML on your site? So what that means is basically the metadata, like the code. So a lot of websites today, you don't have to worry about that because, for example, if you have Squarespace, they don't even show you, or Shopify, whatever, they don't even show you the coding or the HTML. They just show you like a front end. And they'll actually have a box that will say metadata. So all of that is basically irrelevant if you are just using one of those like template website builders. So no need to worry about that. But if you're a developer or if you're actually coding a website from scratch, those metadata terms need to be in your HTML. They can't be on your actual content of your site. So all that these sort of like Squarespaces do is they give you a little like easy widget to put them in, and then they will put it in your HTML for you. So that's what I meant by optimizing HTML on your site. What percentage of bounce rate is acceptable? It depends. It depends what you're doing, because if you are really just trying to drive awareness of the brand and you have like $1 million advertising, you know that you're going to get a lot of people just coming on your site and quickly leaving. So your bounce rate will be very high. Remember, the higher the bounce rate, the more people are bouncing, like saying bye-bye from your site. And that's what you don't want. So acceptable. Don't be, try to get like, if you get 20%, you're good. If you get, don't be above 80, avoid 80, avoid 70. Someone asks, isn't voice search likely to decline because of increased data privacy concerns due to data monitoring by Google and Instagram, which has come to light in recent times? It's a very good question. The thing is, I think because a lot of people now are having their homes, very much tech built around tech. I personally like now always search for music, for example, just by voice, or I search for things on Google, like what's the weather like today, by voice. So if there are certain data privacy concerns, it's going to be Google and Instagram that ends up really like improving their services. But I think today, unfortunately, we know that our phones are always listening to us. That's why we have, for example, suddenly we talk about, I want to go to this theme park, and then the same day you get an ad saying, do you want to go to this theme park? And you're like, did they hear me? How do they find out? That's more than just a search. That's like just your phone. Like your phone, you've accepted that when you bought Apple in the terms and conditions, or when you bought an iPhone or whatever. So unfortunately, a lot of consumers you think would care, but they don't really care, and they just continue using it. And eventually, when something really big happens, maybe this will be a big problem. But for now, I think voice recognition is still very much okay. Someone asked, a lot of people actually asked about, can you elaborate on metadata a bit more? If it isn't on my website, where do I need to add it? Okay, so metadata, it all depends on what your website is, but usually there are some plugins that you can add to your website. One is called Yoast, Y-O-A-S-T, SEO. That's a very good plugin to add that will make sure that your site has good metadata. So Squarespace, for example, something very easy to use like that, will have in the website when you're building it. You just have to look for it. Normally, we don't necessarily see it when we're not searching for it, but you can add metadata in each page, each site, and it will say like add keywords, and it will give you a limit usually as well. So it's very simple to do, and then it might even say this is how it will appear in Google. So that's on that site. If you're on WordPress or something like WooCommerce, you might need to download a plugin. So Yoast is something I recommend, but there are many more that will then, on each site on your back end, you have a Yoast plugin, and then you can then put in the metadata. The other way is just going and coding and putting it in your code, but let's forget that. That's another conversation. But basically, I can't explain it without showing you, but it's pretty dependent on where your website is and what's your back end of your website. But definitely, if you're wondering about it, I would just recommend Googling it or doing a YouTube video to show like a tutorial where to put it in. But it's pretty self-explanatory when you start looking for it. I think right now, maybe you haven't seen it because you haven't looked for it, but later, I'm sure you'll find it on your back end of your website. Another question. I'm trying not to repeat things. How do you identify the most relevant, effective keywords? So this is where I could recommend using some tools. There are a lot of tools that would kind of advise you on what keywords are good for your brand. I would also sort of see what things are people talking about when they're talking about your brand externally, like on social media, in reviews and forums. Analyze those keywords, and if people are saying, I absolutely love this shampoo, it made my hair silky, soft, and smooth, then maybe silky, soft, and smooth should be in your keywords for your brands, right? Because that's a very authentic way of learning and listening to your consumers' wants and needs that many other people might be also wanting to find. So reviews is a very good way to find potential new keywords. Looking at competitors and seeing what they're using in their metadata. So typing in, for example, another hair care brand. I'm giving a lot of examples from hair care because it's just it's what I've done. And then seeing what they're putting in their kind of metadata. Don't copy it because that's a black hat technique, but can you use some of those and extrapolate some of the best keywords for your own? But yeah, remember when I say keywords, this isn't like an ad where you're like putting in just word after word. These are keywords that you're implementing in a sentence. So you have to be also careful about how many you do. You don't want to do too many. So sometimes just the most basic ones that come to your head will be the most effective because you know your own business the most. But yeah, that's basically the best I could say for that. Someone asked, to what extent do you think SEO is dependent on digital marketing tools like influencer marketing or social media marketing, especially with how much those are booming right now? I think they're going to be more and more dependent, absolutely. I mean, the traditional SEO tactics of metadata, keywords, optimization of your site, let's just assume we're in a place where most big websites and most big brands that even have in-house SEO experts or have agencies that are very good and they pay a lot of money, like 10,000s and hundreds of thousands of pounds a year or month, they will have all those in place. So then it comes to on-page SEO is great, technical SEO is great, and there are many brands that are doing that, but then the thing that will make you separate yourself is that off-site SEO. So I think off-page SEO. So basically that's where I would recommend influencer marketing being one of the biggest funnels for today, and also PR and your press and webzines and whoever's talking about you, and then obviously traffic coming from social media, specifically YouTube being, I think, a very, very big driver of SEO. And don't forget, like, Instagram and Facebook are one, and YouTube and Google are one. So you want to be where Google is connected to, and that's why YouTube, I think, is one of the most important ones. Another one. How can you see, view another brand's metadata? Metadata is basically usually just what's going to be visible to the user on the Google search. So if you are, let's say I am Fable and Main, I want to look at drunk elephant metadata, I would just type in drunk elephant into Google, onto Bing, onto Yahoo, and I would see what's coming up in the keywords, like what are the little snippets of words. If it's something specific, because bearing in mind, metadata is on every page. So let's say I type in Fable and Main. The metadata I put for one of my blog posts on how to make an amazing Indian chai, and I've put 7 easy steps to make a turmeric chai latte, that one won't come into Google when you type in Fable and Main. But if I type in Fable and Main chai latte, that will probably come up. So then what I would do for that specific one, I would then say, okay, I'm not benchmarking anymore against a hair care brand, I'm benchmarking against chai latte recipes. Then I would go onto another website and I would on Google and I would go chai latte recipes. And then I would look at what keywords were used for chai latte recipes. And then I would take some of those and put them in my site. So you have to tactically think of metadata per site, but your homepage metadata, which is the most important, that you can benchmark by just looking at other similar sites on Google and getting some inspiration from there, for sure. Also, it could also be worth looking at their retailers, or who's second, who's third, who's fourth, because usually you can imagine the brand site will technically be sometimes always at the top because of just the URL itself being a big differentiator. So who's number 2, who's number 3, who's number 4, who's just basically on that front page, analyze that metadata too, because there's something that those people are doing or those websites are doing right to deserve, apart from just traffic, to deserve a placement in the first page for that business's search results. So that's a very important strategy. Absolutely. And I would recommend you doing that as well. I think we can, because a lot of these questions are repeated. So I think we can kind of, unless anyone has any other last minute questions, I think we can turn it off. But yeah, basically, I hope you enjoyed that little deep dive into SEO. And of course, feel free to research yourself of some more. This is just my sort of understanding of SEO and my personal experiences. It's a very ever-changing field, and it's something that is very personal to each business and each person's goal. So I will definitely make sure you understand that it's all about optimizing, and optimizing is a very vague term, and there's no limit and there's no right or wrong necessarily unless it's right for you. But next week we'll be talking about content marketing, specifically about how to create beautiful, engaging, high quality content. And we'll be going through some examples, and I'll do some demonstrations as well as how I use some of my favorite apps. So if you're definitely looking at creating better content in-house, you should definitely not want to miss the content marketing course. And till then, have an incredible weekend, an amazing week. And this will be uploaded on YouTube after for you to retake some notes, or for you to just rewatch again if you have any other questions. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to email me as always. And I will see you next Friday, same time, same place, and take care. Bye, guys.